Today's talk is all geared toward just simplifying things to be successful. Okay. So we often think about all the things we have to do to be successful. And then we just kind of overwhelm ourselves with how much there needs to be done instead of boiling it down to a couple key things to get the most out of your training and achieve what you want to achieve, especially this year and obviously the past year. There's been so many changes that have happened. It's kind of like there's always a moving target, and that makes it really tough. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made. There's a lot of barriers that happen in that scenario. And it's something that can get stressful, and you might not feel like you can make progress, or you might be able to quickly make an excuse instead of finding a way forward. So today's talk is just going to hopefully prompt you to think about things a little bit differently and get a little bit more out of your training. And that way we can continue to move forward throughout this year without, all this kind of uncertainty playing a role in our process. So please pay attention. Hope you guys enjoy this talk and hopefully take something out of it, and also be ready to type into the chat. So I love this first graphic. It's called decision fatigue. And it's something that we've probably all experienced a lot of over the past year. And it really takes away from your ability to perform. So you can see the green battery kind of being fully charged. If you think of your phone battery, it's when you have no decisions, right? Or it's when you're pretty free of decisions and things are just operating at a normal pace. There's not really any restrictions happening or anything of that nature. And then just like as you use your phone, and maybe you use an app or two at the same time, you're on the phone call for a while, you're texting a lot, you start doing all these different things or having to make all these different decisions, and eventually it starts to wear down your battery. So the more decisions you have to make, the more you're draining your battery to go out and perform. Just like as you use your phone, you start to see that drop in how much you're able to do. You could take the word decisions, cross it out, and put barriers to describe the past year, right? There's so many different barriers that we've hit on that just have popped up because of the pandemic and changing. Can we practice in a pool? Can that pool be indoor or outdoor? Are the gyms open? How many people are allowed in a room? How many people are allowed in a training pod? There's all these barriers that keep popping up. And what that does is it starts to drain you, right? It's fatiguing. You're like, man, I just got into a routine with what I was doing in the past, and now things have been changed again. So it's one of those things that it's something that's going to happen. It's something you'll face throughout your life. Decision fatigue is not just going to stop in college. It continues. I can warn you, it continues to grow as you get older and older, and you have bigger decisions to make that have a lot more consequence throughout the course of your life. So one thing to help all of this barrier or all this decision fatigue that can pop up is to really simplify things. And success really comes down to a couple key ingredients executed over and over again. So the first question, I want you to open up the chat and I want you to answer this question or this prompt and say, what are two things that you can't control this season? So I want you to open the chat. Everyone needs to respond. If you got a couple people in your group listening, just type one response for your group. That's fine. But I want to know two things that you can't control this season. So go ahead, pop open that chat, and I should see some answers starting to come through. All right. So everyone needs to take a stab at it and go from there. As you're doing that, I'm just going to tell a little story, and then we'll talk about what responses we've received. So the person on the screen, if I had to guess, almost everybody knows who this person is. This is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant was one of the best basketball players to ever play the game. And one of my favorite stories, and you might have heard this story in the past, but one of my favorite stories is of Alan Stein. Alan Stein was a basketball strength coach and got to go watch Kobe Bryant practice. And he went and practiced at 4 a.m. or something like that. It was a crazy start time for practice, but Alan was so excited to watch Kobe practice because he wanted to learn what made Kobe, what made him so great at what he did. And he figured Kobe had all these secrets to the game of basketball that other people, just didn't have. And so he wanted to learn those secrets so he could go help more athletes be like Kobe. So Alan goes and he watches Kobe Bryant practice, and he just watches Kobe do really simple drills over and over and over again. Just simple drills over and over again. And at this point, Alan's just like, man, all right, we got to be getting to the good stuff eventually. And this 3 hour, I think it was, practice went on. And Alan didn't see anything earth shattering. He saw Kobe do simple things over and over again, very basic movements on the basketball court. At the end, Alan got to talk to Kobe, and Alan was like, man, like, I didn't really see you do anything out of the norm. Like, how are you so good at what you do? And Kobe's response was, I'm not great because I do all these flashy things. I'm great because I do the basics so well that nobody can guard me. And if you think about that, that's such a relief, right? It's such a relief to see that an elite level athlete is not worried about all the flashy, crazy things that you can do in practice. He was just worried about doing the basics so well that nobody could guard him. From a swimming perspective, how awesome can your form be on everything you do? How can you get a little bit better at form over and over again so you don't have a breakdown late race, right? You can work on all these little things that make you hit a new level. So if we go back to the prompt, I'm just going to go into the chat here. I saw a lot of things about weather, right? You guys are practicing outside, so weather can be a factor. Another interesting one is other people's actions, right? You can't control what other people do around you. You can try to lead by example and hopefully bring those people along with you and help stimulate a positive change, but you can't necessarily control what they're going to do at the end of the day. Obviously, shutdowns because of COVID cases in the county, and different restrictions, different time restrictions. That's a big one, right? We don't have the same amount of time that we normally would to dedicate toward our goals. And this is one of my favorite answers, how others take responsibility for the actions and how they respond to others. Number one, you can't control really what people are going to do at the end of the day, but then taking ownership is something you can hope to help facilitate. And, but at the end of the day, they're going to take the responsibility that they want to take. And so that's a great one. Another one, good one here as well, is cafe options. So we're going to talk about nutrition a little bit today. You can't control what the cafe cooks. You could probably ask to have some different options, but at the end of the day, they probably have their plan, and you're not going to be able to really dictate that as much. How many meets you're going to have, how many chances you're really going to have to go out and achieve a new best. It's very much an unknown and something we can't control this year. So those are all great answers. So thinking about Kobe, right, in that example of the basics working really well, I want you to answer this next prompt. So you're going to open the chat again, and I want you to type out 2 things you can control this season. What are 2 things you can control? And I want you to think about, they can be super simple, they can be super complex, but I want you to open the chat again and type out 2 things that you can control this season. And I want to see what answers come in. So the first one right off the bat is great. Effort and attitude. Attitude is the most underestimated aspect of team development that I think is out there. So we all understand that attitude plays a really big role, but we often think of attitude as something that affects us inwardly, or an inward effect, but attitude affects the team, right? If you show up and you're having an off day, but you still show up with that fiery attitude that you're going to get the best out of your training session, right? It makes that off day stop at one person and not spread to others. So that was a great one. I love that effort and attitude. I'm seeing a lot of effort. Hydration. Absolutely. You can always control your hydration. We're very fortunate to have pretty easy access to water sources, right? So we can control that a little bit more. How hard you push yourself and the actions you put on others. I love that one as well. You can control your actions, right? You might not be able to control others, but you can control your actions and how your actions are received by your team, by your community, by your family, and all of that. Positivity, practice, recovery are 2 things we can control. When we get to practice, we can control the narrative of that practice, and we can control the narrative of that recovery process as well. So these are good answers. I want you to think about these throughout the rest of this talk. You're hitting on a lot of good stuff. And another good one more to hit on, is how I reflect on progress. What does progress look like this year? With the time we have, do we need to adjust the definition of progress? What does not progressing look like this year? That's even a better question. How do we handle maybe a slower time of progress and things of that nature? So very good points. Let's keep those in mind as we continue on. So we're going to go into a couple things. And again, remember, we're trying to simplify this, right? So I want to give you a couple things to think about that you can control. And these are going to hit on some of the answers you provided. But I want to show you how easy it is to be successful, even under the most extreme circumstances. So number one is becoming a better mover, right? This is something we can all control. That could be as simple as not having as much shoulder restriction, being able to squat to a full range of motion. And it can start with something as simple as warming up with intent on land and in water. So some of you have sent me video footage of you doing different exercises, and you know something's out of place and you're asking for feedback. That's that intent that we need. That's the intent that you need to grow and become a better mover. If you know something feels off and you need help fixing it, you have to bridge that gap and reach out for help. So that's part of that process of becoming a better mover. A warm up helps you prepare steadily and safely for training versus an acute dose of intensity. And what I mean by that is, if you're coming right out of class, you're coming out of this presentation and we just go hop in the water after this or hop into a dryland training session and you haven't warmed up, you're setting yourself up for failure in the long run, right? We have to get into that process of gradually, steadily, gradually raising our heart rate, gradually getting the body a little bit warmer and making things go at a nice steady progression versus kind of just jumping in and expecting to be at our best right away. And the next bullet point, if you devalue, so if you do not give this section of training the time it needs, it'll eventually catch up with you. And based off the history I've seen, it catches up at the worst possible time. So if you're training really hard for a meet, it could pop up in the form of a groin pull if you're a breaststroker right before that meet. It could be shoulder pain starts to develop right before you're going into the championship meet. And so we want to avoid these things. And you might get away all season with it, and it could catch up to you at the worst possible time. So you see over here, I have a screenshot of one of your training sessions or a training session that you'll encounter. And basically, the better mover portion of this is going to be your A and B blocks, right? It's just getting that training prep, that phase prep going, and is something that is setting the tone for the work that's coming up. Yes, you should focus on your quality of work throughout the training session, but your A and B blocks are really focusing on this warming up with intent. And it's something that, we warm up on land before getting in the water as well. So really think about that. One thing you can control is becoming a better mover. Why is this important? If you look at the effects of swimming, it's pretty simple. This was a study I utilized in the spring. So some of you will recognize this from a spring talk I gave. But this looked at a group of swimmers, elite swimmers, and found that 91% of elite swimmers, 73 out of 80 in this study, reported shoulder pain. Okay, and you can see here it's broken down, different strokes. There's unilateral, that means one side, or bilateral, both side. So there's a mix of everything going on here. But what I want you to take away from this is swimming, even at the highest level, with the highest level athletes, looks like it's already causing pain in some cases. In a high amount, 91%. That's not just some, that's a pretty hefty amount of cases. So if we go back to this piece, we better strive to become a better mover, or we're going to experience pain, right? The sport's already kind of destined for that feeling of pain. And so we want to avoid that. It's a great sport. Swimming's fine, but it requires becoming a better mover. And that's something you can control. So you can see here, the effects of swimming in elite athletes, 91% are reporting some sort of pain. And these are people that did not have a previous shoulder surgery. So no known, shoulder surgery issue going on there. This is just people like you and me that enjoy swimming at a high level and are experiencing some sort of pain. So by becoming this better mover and focusing on your warm-up blocks, focusing on your preparation for practice, focusing on your stroke when you're under fatigue can go a long way and help you be successful. Now, here's the cool part of that. If you complete more than 80% of your planned training, you're 7 times more likely to achieve your season goal. Okay, so 80% is the threshold. Anything over 80% is awesome. You're 7 times more likely to achieve your season goal. And this was a quote during a talk I had with Kendall Jacobson. She's a physical therapist in Austin, Texas, who works predominantly with swimmers and has a ton of awesome research on this topic. But just imagine, I'm asking you to get a B, right? If we're talking in school terms, that, based off different grading structures, usually 80% is going to be right around a B. I'm not even asking you to get an A in training. Basically, if you get a B, you have a 7 times greater chance to achieve your goals. Just completing 80% of your planned training results in 7 times more likely to achieve your season goal. Okay, that includes swimming, that includes your dry land, that includes your mobility, right? It includes all of that. It's not just swimming, it's not just dry land, it's not just your recovery stuff. It's a 70% or it's 80% of all of that. Everything that is planned. So your dry land is planned, your swim sessions are planned. Okay, all of that. If you hit 80%, again, aiming for a B, you have a 7 times more likely chance to achieve your goals this season. In a time that we're in now, that is super powerful, right? Striving for perfection right now might seem like a major barrier and decision fatigue, right? It's going to wear you away to try to aim for that perfection. A B seems a little bit more attainable. So the next thing, I don't have this on a slide, but I want you to open the chat and I want you to write down 2 things or type out 2 things that you could do a better job of to help you get to that B of your total training for the year. So that 80% goal. If we're going back to this, write down 2 things in the chat that you can do better and you'll strive to do better to make sure you complete 80% or more of your training this year. All right, so I'm going to open the chat. I want to see those answers coming in. I'm looking for 2 things that you can do to help you hit that 80%. First one, stretching and hydrate. Beautiful. That's spot on. That is a great way to start. Making sure you get your range of motion work in, making sure you hydrate. What else do we got coming in here? I want 2 things that will help you, that you can commit to get to that 80%. Better sleep schedule. That's fantastic. That's another one. Sleep is recovery, right? Nutrition is recovery. And make sure that you're able to capitalize on sleep being the greatest recovery resource we have, right? Organizing my schedule. That is a great one because right now, right, we're not in a routine. Our routine keeps changing. So if you can take control of that a little bit and organize your schedule, you can be prepared for change a little bit better. If you make your dry land a meeting on your calendar, if you make your swim practice a meeting on your calendar, and then build around that, you'll have more success in the long run. Working on a healthier lifestyle. This is one I definitely want to hit on because yes, we're here to perform, right? We're here to hit a new best. We're here to hit a new level of performance. But at the end of the day, health is the foundation to performance. If we are unhealthy, it takes away from the amount of ability we have to perform. So that's a really great point to think about. If you're not healthy, right? And that could be mental health, that could be physical health. If you're not healthy, it's going to take away from that reserve that you have to go out and perform. Another one that came in was just, focusing on the small things, edit on the small things to make big improvements. Yes, absolutely. Focus on little things. If we go back to Kobe Bryant, right? We had that story about how he just focused on the basics over and over and over again to the point where nobody could stop him from doing the basics. That's a great plan. Focus on those little basics over time and getting more out of what you can do with your body, right? It's super simple when you start thinking of it. Last one I'll point on, completing all the dry lands instead of routine schedule. I think the routine piece is absolutely important. When you set a routine, you're more likely to to stick to it. We are routine creatures. Even if you like to be free flowing, you like to be free flowing within your routine, right? So there's always some sort of routine aspect. So great job with that. The next one, this one came up in the chat. The second thing you can control this season is your effort. And training without focused effort, so not just effort, but focused effort, is just filler. So it takes effort to show up. It takes effort to make sure you get your schoolwork done. It takes effort to get to your meetings and all that. But if you're just kind of doing the checkbox, it's not going to really work. And again, this is another image from a talk I gave back in the spring about avoiding the gray area. So you see the mountain, you see all the peaks of the mountain, and then you see the valley, and then there's kind of just this in-between area. And the place where performance kind of goes to just drop off and not happen is this gray area. It's basically where your slow is too fast and your fast is too slow. And so if you think about that from a swim practice perspective, when you're supposed to be recovering, make sure it's a recovery pace. Don't just push harder for the sake of pushing harder. And then when it's time to go fast, make sure you're truly going fast. Okay, I want you to really think about that. Because if we go back to things like time, right? We don't have that much time right now. So if we're spending time not going as fast as we should and going too fast when we shouldn't, that's not focused effort. That's just putting in effort. That's just kind of checking the box, which isn't going to get anywhere. And one thing, a couple of things you can do to help avoid this gray area is knowing your numbers, right? Your pace. I know you have sets where it's like, all right, I need to hold my 200 pace. Okay, well, what is that? What is your 200 pace? If you can't spit that off without really thinking about it, maybe you need to make a sheet of paper that has all your different paces. And that way you can have that with you at practice. In dryland, what weight did you utilize last time? If you're guessing, again, you're not putting in focused effort. RPE, we use a lot of RPE. What did I do last time? What am I supposed to do this time compared to last time? And so you take these things and it really helps you be more effective with your training. And then when you talk about the gray area, realize that your training time is such a small portion of your day. So if we take a 2-hour practice and a 1-hour dry land, it's basically about 12.5% of your day is spent training and 87.5% of your day is spent out of training. Okay, so it's such a small chunk of time, right? It's a very small amount of time that you're actually spending training. So bring the focus, bring that effort. And I know you guys are talking about core values and establishing some core values. Where does focus fit into your core values? And that's something to think about. So now I want you to open the chat. And again, I don't have a slide for this one, but I just want you to open the chat and put one thing, just one, that you need to improve upon to get out of the gray area with your training. What is one thing right now that you feel like is having you sit in this gray area and is one thing you need to improve upon to get out of the gray area or stay out of the gray area with your training? So go ahead and open the chat. I want you to put one thing that'll help you get out of the gray area or stay out of the gray area with your training. So as those come in, I'll go ahead and talk about them a little bit. Yeah, so the first one that came in was hydration. It's funny how there's trends, right? Hydration or dehydration impairs performance. And we're going to talk about that. Being deliberate during practice, absolutely, right? It's such a small amount of time. Your dry land and your swim practice is only 12.5% of your day. So if we're just looking at swim practice, it's even less, right? If we're just looking at dry land, it's less. So really being focused on that. Planning out your days, absolutely. Being prepared ahead of time is something that helps you get out of that gray area. Mentally transitioning to I can instead of I can't and using positivity. That is a great one because there's going to be days that are not that exciting. They're not that fun, right? Being positive, right? That's another one. Just how do we make the tough days still progress, right? How do we make those tough days progress? Being prepared for practice. That's a huge one. Not just showing up and not knowing where your equipment is or kind of just be running in scatterbrained or showing up to dry land and not even knowing what today's session has scheduled. All of those little things add up and help get you out of the gray area. So these are really good points. And another one that came in was just actually hitting different zones. and cooling down. Those are two great ones. If you don't know if you hit a certain zone in training, you probably didn't, right? Or you probably spent too much time in a certain zone that you shouldn't have. And it's going to affect your performance in the long run. So think about these things. How do you stay out of this gray area? And I want you to think about avoiding this gray area at all costs. Because if you can do this more times than not, it's going to work out in your benefit, regardless of how many meets we have, regardless of how many opportunities you have to go fast and really try to improve, right? If you focus on, controlling what you can control, so moving better, your effort and focused effort at that, it's going to make a huge difference. The last thing you can control is making the best food choices you can with the options you have, right? I gave this talk earlier. We talked about we can't control the dining commons. We can't control always what food we have access to, but we can make the best choice out of those food choices, right? So don't make it super complicated. Don't shoot for the A when you only have to get the B. Make sure we find what works best out of our process. You can always strive for more than a B, but don't allow the weight of the A or the perfection to take away from your ability to get the B, right? So we at least want to cover that B at all costs. Yeah, great if you get an A minus, great if you get a B plus or an A plus, but don't let that weight of chasing perfection take away from what you need to get done. So 3 ways we can make the best food options or best choices: avoid processed foods, build consistency with your meals. So that's your meal building worksheet. And the one that you guys have hit on the most today is hydration. And I bring this picture up again, and you might remember this from the fall, but if you're a racing fan, you'll hear the announcers talk about dirty air versus clean air. So clean air is experienced by the cars out in front. There's nothing, right? It's fresh air that gets to go through the engine, and it results in a better output for those cars. The dirty air is the air that the cars are experiencing in that second, third, fourth, fifth row, where they're getting all the used air that comes from the cars in front of them. So then their machines cannot perform at the highest level. The best way to look at that from a nutrition standpoint is if you're putting the ultra processed into your body, if you're eating junk food nonstop and not being consistent with your meals, you're fueling yourself with dirty air. It's that simple. You're fueling yourself with something that's not going to allow you to perform at the highest level. So remember, you have that meal building worksheet. You're trying to build that consistency with meals. Reach out to me if you need some help with this aspect of meal building based off of the resources you have available. And you can do this stuff by winning the small battles. So we talked about planning. I saw a whole lot of planning being thrown out there. Plan for practice, plan my day, right? Plan something ahead of time, especially breakfast, because I get it. I like the mornings. I get up ready to roll, but I also know that's not always the norm, right? Sometimes mornings are tough and it's really hard to wake up and operate with a clear mind. So plan breakfast ahead of time. This is how you win this last one in nutrition. Prepare something ahead of time the night before so that it's grab and go in the morning. Instead of grabbing that Pop-Tart because it's easy, it's accessible, make something high quality the night before that you can grab and go in the morning. So overnight oats, I got those pictured here. Great option. You prepare them the night before. You can make a couple of batches of them and have them for breakfast. And then you're really starting off on the right foot. Fill your water bottle and put it in your normal day path. Making sure we get hydration going early and often is critical. Track your hydration. We've talked about this. We did this exercise in the past, taking your daily ounces, figuring that out, and then tracking. Make sure you're hitting that. So today, starting now, we're going to do our hydration tracking. So I will comment on the team feed, and then you'll need to comment once you hit your hydration goal for the day. This is super critical to your long-term success and just enjoyment in life. Being dehydrated all the time, it just is not fun. It's not going to help make life easier. So keep that in mind. So carry a water bottle with you at all times. Start each day with 3 cups of water, and then drink 2 cups of water before each meal to make sure that you're actually hungry versus, if you're dehydrated, sometimes you can express as hunger. And then limit those liquid calories because that's going to help you keep everything else in check. Why is this important? Why do I harp on hydration so much? Just a 2% deficit in hydration results in impaired cognitive performance. So basically means your mind is not working at the highest level. So how can we expect to go out and perform at the highest level when we're impaired, right? Even some studies look at 1 to 2% dehydration is causing some sort of impaired performance. So making sure you stay ahead of this is so critical. And that's why today, again, remember, I will comment on the team feed, and you need to comment once you hit your hydration goal. If you don't remember what your hydration goal is, the formula is right here. Daily ounces, you take your body weight in pounds times 2/3 plus 10 ounces for every 30 minutes of structured activity. And you got to get in this habit of really owning your hydration more than anything. The final way to win the small battles is to eat at least 2 colors with each meal. For breakfast, strawberries and bananas, 2 colors, done. Pretty simple, right? Strawberries and blueberries, done. And you go carrots and peas for lunch, done. 2 colors. And when I say 2 colors, I'm looking at fruits and vegetables in particular, or you can put some nuts in there as well to help with color. Not looking at meat in particular, but looking at the fruit and vegetable side of things. Why is this important? Different colors equal different nutrients, and a wide range of colors will help fill any gaps you have. And if we go back to that point that was brought up in the chat earlier, focusing on overall health. If you get 2 colors per meal, you're really helping fill those gaps, which makes you a healthier person. When you have less gaps, there's less stress and greater performance resource. All right, so it's that simple. You fill the gaps, you're a healthier person overall, and you have greater performance resource to work with and go out there and actually achieve what you want to achieve. In a year where there's so much change and so much uncertainty, right? We need to capitalize on every opportunity we have. And so by filling the gaps, being healthy, not taking away from our performance resource, we can still go out there and achieve. So the last one you got to participate with today in the chat, I want you to open the chat and I want you to type in one nutritional task you're going to focus on to help you win the small battles. And hydration's off the table because we've beaten that one enough today. So open the chat. I want one nutritional task that you're going to do to help win the small battles, and talk about how you're maybe even going to implement it. So go ahead and do that. Once they start coming in on the chat, I'll start reading them off. All right. First one that came in, stay away from snacking on junk food. So I did a little talk on healthy snacking. If you need to, go back and review that talk and start making some better choices. Snacks are a huge part of my day. So being prepared not to just grab something that is easily accessible just because is critical. Staying away from liquid calories, very good. Focusing on getting hydration from water. So when I say hydration, I mean water. And really, this one's tough though. Not eating ice cream. That one is a tough one, right? But it also will help in the long run. Or maybe even not completely knocking it out, but isolating how much ice cream I'm having, right? That's something, I enjoy ice cream. It's great, right? But I don't need it every night. Maybe it's something I just treat myself to once a week and things like that. Snacking with some good things like fruits and vegetables, very good. And timing food into the whole day, right? How does food fit in my day? If you don't make eating part of your day, you're not going to be able to go out and perform as well. So it's something that you really want to focus on throughout your day. All right, so great answers there. So as you can see, today we didn't talk about anything super advanced, right? We didn't get too crazy with anything. We kept it pretty simple. You can control becoming a better mover, right? Focusing on your warm up a little bit more, focusing on just how your body is moving throughout a dry land session or during your training. You can focus on controlling your effort, right? That was the second one. And focused effort, it's not always going hard, right? It's not always just trying to push yourself into the ground, but knowing when you're supposed to go easy and doing that, having the discipline not to push too hard just for the sake of looking cool and keeping up with someone when really you're supposed to be taking it easy. And then the last one, taking care of yourself, fueling yourself with the best choices you have. And I gave you 3 different examples there of how you can do that. you can be successful in any environment when you focus on those things. Um, doesn't matter if you don't have as much swim time as you'd normally be used to. Doesn't matter if you don't have the normal amount of weight you're used to in dry land. But if you focus on kind of dumbing it down to these simple things, you can simplify to be successful.